Welcome to chapter 9, and in today's lesson what we're gonna work on is how we can use a PCG framework to not only activate but at the same time spawn all the character actors into the scene, and so that they can also be able to navigate through the nav mesh bound that we're gonna set up in a bit later during this exercise, but also make the characters roaming around the scene here. So, and what we're gonna do is first start off with creating the character actor blueprints, which will basically base on the characters that are available with the project, which comes with the GitHub repository. You can either choose female models, which come here, and there are two of them, or work with the males. In today's lesson, what we're going to do is to create this sort of like a crowd simulation effect, where literally the characters are running around themselves and also avoiding any obstacles on the way. And all these characters will be spawned using just a very simple PCG node structure inside PCG graph. So to begin with, let's create a character blueprint. So I'm going to create a blueprint folder here. And right here, click on Blueprint class and go to character. Let's call it AI player. And next thing what we're actually going to do is to go to our event graph. And that's where we're going to set up all the logic. So in this case, what I'm going to do is to create two variables. First one is going to be skeletal meshes. And the next one will be anim sequences. In this case, we'll be using skeletal meshes characters, and we're gonna have an array of them. So let's type in skeletal meshes. And let's go to the right here and just set it to array. And for this one, we are going to use anim sequences. Make sure you also set it to array, because we're going to use multiple of the characters as well as animations that comes with that. So let's make them public. And first, let's compile it. So now we have these two variables exposed now on our details panel. And to begin with, let's start adding two first. And I'm going to do the same for animation sequence. So in this case, what we're going to do is choose characters. So I'm going to pick up this male, and we're going to use Remy. I'm going to use two characters as male characters, and you can do the same thing for males as females as well if you wanted to. But for now, let's just, because this blueprint only going to work with men, so we're going to use just males characters here. So let's go to the same thing for animation. So in this case, I have a walking male, as you see on the bottom, and the same goes for the Remy character who stays an idle. And what's going to be very cool, because later we're going to create a logic as we go along with this exercise, where it's going to swap between these two animations. So the one male character that is supposed to be a business male will be also texting in the idle position, and the other character, which is Remy character on skeletal mesh, will be walking, and vice versa. So that's something we're going to set up then after this. And next thing what we're going to do is to create a custom event. And let's go create and call AI walk. And next thing, let's pick up our character movement component here, drag it out. Let's search for set max walk. Speed in this case. And let's go plug this in, and let's set this to initial 100. That means it will be working at 100 units per second. So next thing I'm gonna do is, because we're gonna deal with, in this case, AI, where we're gonna randomly walk and roaming around the, in this case, scene, we're gonna use this component called AI move to. An AI move to component here, which is the function, it comes with Unreal's built-in engine system that it does all the very simple AI movement. And of course, you can set this all up to make sure that it does pretty much accurate way. And this is what we're going to do, is to set this up so that we can have something like a characters roaming around and do their own business, depending on what kind of actions they're going to do based on these animations we have available. So to start off, let's go and set this promote to self, get this turns to self. And let's go and set up our also get actor location, because we need to start off with the actor's location at the beginning. So let's right click and search for get actor location. And because we're trying to do this within the reachable radius that's available within the point space, so we're gonna make sure we search for get random reachable points in radius. So this will help us to allow to, depend on what destination is in, then we can set it up to randomly rotate, and then at that time when it rotates, then it just moves elsewhere, basically. That's what basically it's gonna be doing. So it'll be randomly moving around it. But because we also have to make sure we set this to something like at least to tab 1000. So every time it makes 1000 units, let's say approximately 10 meters, it will change its direction. And that's basically what's going to be. It's randomly be reaching to some point within this radius space, and then it will change its position based on the tangent position of the characters set up on the scene. Let's just move this around so at least it's kind of clear as well. Because this setup is pretty much done. So next thing what we're going to do is to make sure that this action takes place. So it now repeats it, but as we go, as the character walks, it only does this once, but because we want to do it many times, so we have to return this AI walk by setting up the custom event that we've created, and it's going to repeat this. And we need to connect this on the success. I'm just going to go and connect this, so it then loops it, in this case operation, this animation walk. This is pretty much what we have done now for this AI functionality. And next thing what we're gonna do is to create a randomized, also animation, but a skeletal mesh swap, as it, depending how it's going to be spawned, it will basically swap the character but also animation with it. So that's what it's gonna do next, is to randomize the characters with their animation. So in this case, what I'm going to do is to bring those up here, get skeletal meshes, the same thing for animation. And I'm going to use the mesh character here that comes with that. And I'm going to look for, let's set skeletal mesh asset. And I'm going to do the same thing, but this time for animation. Let me duplicate it and just go search for play animation. And now what we're going to do is to make sure it randomizes. So from that, in this case, a container of the arrays that comes with these two characters, it will basically, we're gonna do is to figure out how it's going to then randomly select the meshes that it's gonna play with. And let's go and then search for get a copy, because we need to access one of the arrays here. And in this case, what I'm gonna do is to plug this into our skeletal mesh, a new mesh here, and let's do the same thing for animation. And this kind of time, let me just move this out of the way slightly so it makes a bit more space. I put it here, and actually let me comment this one. So I'm gonna go hit C, comment, and I'm gonna call AI for character. Also, next one, and we can just move this out of the way here. And then we're gonna set up now first our condition here. So right click and let's search for branch. And I'm gonna make sure it randomizes our character setup. So let's search for a random integer range. And let's go and make it an equal numerator sign. I'm gonna connect this to, and then set this to maximum 1. And with this setup, then we can make this condition that every time it randomly changes its range, then every time you hit play, it will choose between 0 or 1. And if it's equals to 0, then the condition is going to set to work on skeletal mesh, as well as the play animation. But this will come in a second. So let's go and set this all up here. And so let's go and connect this to our skeletal mesh right after this. And let's go and try this out here. So we're gonna have to plug this into event begin play. And let me just make it a little bit cleaner, so at least we know what we're dealing with here. Next thing is to do the same what we've done already, but because we also wanted to do this for our, not just condition that we have set up, because it's going to be mainly for then later animation, but because we also wanted to choose which index will be changing while we're choosing the characters from the skeletal mesh container here. So we're gonna connect this, our render integer in range, with our get node here, and then we can carry on and do this for our animations. So let me just bring this animations nodes here, and I put it right there on top. And I am going to pretty much do the same, but we're gonna access those animations that comes with that, plug this in here, and also let me loop them. And I'm gonna basically plug this into our play, into our truth statement here. So I'm gonna move this up here. And let's copy this. And we're gonna, for the false statement, so if the character's animation, whatever the skeletal mesh is being randomly picked on and then applied, depending on the condition, whether it's equal 0 or 1, then what's going to happen is, as a true statement is set to 0, that means the first animation from its array that comes from one of these characters here will be set up to work first, and then the second letter will be the first animation that comes later, that is 1. In this case, I'm going to set to 1. So next thing is, because we already have only set up the cycle of how we can randomly change not just skeletal meshes, but also its animation. But we also have to but we also have to tell that we also trying to make sure the character is going to be working using AI that we just created on the bottom. Because at the moment it's not doing anything. This is just like a separate function here. So we're gonna set this to make it work. So in this case, after we decide and how it goes randomly being swapped and changed to make sure that animation is gonna play for one of the characters, we just making sure that it's also going to work on the scene. So I'm gonna right click and search for AI work and plug this right at the end under the false statement. That's pretty much it, because we reached the 0. A condition that it's going to be just animation they're playing, doing its own thing, and then when it decides to say add another condition, then that character is going to be set to walk in this case, and it's going to also walk using the AI setup that we've just created. So we can just go and save it. So next thing, let's set up our character's position. So in this case, I'm going to do is pick up any random characters I have. So in this case, Bismail. That's going to save it, and let's go to our viewport. And let's set him up properly. So I'm going to put it right in the bottom where it should be, where that touches the cylinders, in this case, capsule's collision. As you see, the arrow points this direction. So we're going to have to make sure it faces the same direction as the arrow. So I'm going to now go compile this. And next thing I'm going to do, because the characters later are gonna not be doing a proper rotations, that's what we're gonna do, is to go and try and fix it. Because at the moment the characters will be walking, but they're gonna have a very stiff and very quote rotation, because it's gonna be very rigid rotation. So we need to smooth this rotation by making sure we tick some of the boxes that comes with the players, in this case a character component. So in this case, what we need to do is to go and if you selected AI player, then go and search for use controller desired rotation. And what's going to allow, it will decide, depending on what range we're using, is that we're going to use all the different, in this case, directions between 0 to 180 or whatever that's been, in this case, implemented into settings. And the same thing we're going to have to also do is to disable one of the rotations that causes the characters to snap the rotation instead of doing the smooth rotation. And for this, we need to search for use controller rotation yaw. And at the moment it's set to enable, so it's set to disable it. Compile that. And what we're going to do this time, we're going to create a new blueprint, and then, because we already have a character blueprint, we're going to use another and create a simple actor blueprint. Let's call it BP PCG crowd. And let's open this up. And that's what we're going to actually do, is to make sure it spawns properly depending on the distance. So in this case, I'm going to call it spawning distance. So I'm going to set this to float. Let's compile it. So let's set to 100, but let's change this range to from 100 to 500. So at least we don't have to worry about too low or too high spaces, because we're going to have ranges in between. I'm going to compile that. And also what we need to do is to set up a spline. We'll just remove that. Right click, spline generation. I set to circle. Let's make it like big, 500 perhaps, and that should be okay. And also what we're gonna do is to close loop. Perfect. There'll be maybe a little bit some of these. Yeah, you see there's some extra pointers. So we remove some of the points. Now it's perfect. And let's add our PCG component. File this and let's save that. And I'm going to drag and drop into space here. We just remove this player start actor. Next thing, let's go and create our PCG. So I'm going to create a PCG folder here. So I'm going to, and let's create our PCG crowd graph. So I'm going to right click, PCG crowd. And let's go start adding our nodes. So let's start adding 4 nodes. Get actor data, line sampler, transfer points, and then of course, in this case, it's going to be spawn actor. So as you may notice, it looks similar to a static mesh spawner, but because we are going to use actors instead of meshes to procedurally generate characters on the scene. So that is a bit different. It's more powerful, but it's pretty much spawns similar way as static mesh spawner does. But in this case, it uses actors instead of static meshes. So to begin with, let's go start connecting them all together. So I'm going to plug this on in and go to a transfer as well points, connect it together. And also let's go select this spline, make sure you set on interior, and I'm going to make sure it's set to unbound. Next we're going to do is to create a get actor property. And I'm going to call this spawning distance. I'm going to use this and it set this to our interior sample spacing. Let's make sure also transfer points set to something like 90, so it randomly changes its rotation at its set axis. And I'm going to also maybe try also change the bit scale so it's kind of randomizes people's heights. And I'm going to do select spawn actor. Make sure you set merge only with PCG only so that we can access all the available here properties. And next bit is to make sure that we're going to add a template actor, and in this case it's going to be AI player. So as you may see, it's there, and I'm going to go and connect this, save that, and I'm going back to PCG route, and I'm going to then our PCG route here. Compile this. So now you see our characters started to populate. We're only using this as a characters here as a reference, so don't worry about this because these characters won't be visible when we gonna hit play and check this how it works. Set up the crowd's position. Gonna set up just so that it's as high as this, and also not to forget, because at the moment it's not going to work because what we need to make sure is also for the AI to make sure it works, we have to set the nav mesh bound so that it calculates this whole floor position where it should be walking within this area. So in this case, I'm gonna go with plus sign and search for nav mesh bounds volume, which is this one. And as you may see, there's the cube there. And to visualize what it's doing, so I'm gonna press P key button to see what is the walkable area or what's not walkable. So as you see, when it turns green, it means it's walkable. When you move it around, see it turns red, that means it's not walkable. And to make it much more fun around this, I'm gonna basically add some shapes. So at least they're gonna be acting as like walls here. So as you may see, those are gonna be our obstacle areas here. And I'm gonna do the same thing there. And so on. And of course you can expand it so it doesn't, so let me just expand this. And also, if you don't wanna have too many players, we can also go to our PCG route here and also set up our volume space here. So we're going to set to something like 500. Maybe it's a bit too much. Let's go 250. And then I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger. And that should be all right. However you want to go and set this all up. So that should be enough. So now let's go and test this out. And if you play it, then you should be fine. As you can see now, our characters are just doing their own business. And of course they can interact with each other. It's obviously normal because AI is very simple to only interact with objects that are on the scene, which only have collisions on. And if they're interacting as characters, they also can literally bounce on each other. But that's okay, because at the moment I'm only trying to show you how you can work things out in terms of you testing your PCG with different functionalities like spawning actors. And of course there are some small things, like because the characters are kind of being floating, but that's fine because it's usually down to collision. And we can always set this up very quickly. And what is so cool about this, you can individually pick them up and change them however you want to. So if I want this bigger, you see the characters get a little bigger. And you can do the same thing for others, so you can just make it smaller. So if I go back, I set this to smaller, then you start seeing this whole character starting to change. So it's a very cool addition to this whole PCG framework process here. And of course, if you want to do some changes extra, so you can go back to your asset folder here and change this inside. So let's say that in this case, maybe because you wanted to see now the legs are a bit lifting up, that you can change this slow, kind of lower, compile that, play it one more, and you start seeing the feet are no longer being floating over the, in this case, over the floor. And you can also increase their speeds. So if you go back to your AI player, go to your event graph and change their speeds to something a little bit bigger than that. So let's say 200. Obviously they're gonna work faster and so on. So it's very cool, right? It gives you that extra options to test out. You can do this on your own terms, however you want to. So that was it. That was an exercise on where you learn on extra PCG frameworks features that enables you to also input another nodes that helps you to also spawn actors instead of just static mesh spawners. So that gives you also another ability to not only experiment but also diversify your workflow and test this out by doing these very simple exercise and projects that can be very handy for your, in this case, future game projects or any visualization project, anything that relates to also simulations, characters and like animals and so on, and then use the PCG framework to populate them across the surfaces. So that gives you an extra ability to decide how you can build environments with living characters and so on. So thank you so much and all the best with your projects.